voices. Yeah. I went to check for low light. It doesn't show on the screen, so. No, it's fine. We're recording.
Okay.
Okay, so usually what I get people to do first is say who they are. I don't use it necessarily, but it's just for my purposes. I mean,
Sure.
I probably, if I want, I can always put a little white script at the bottom of the screen. So who and what
Sure.
day it is and all that.
Okay.
Sure.
Well, then I'll start. My name is Guy Werderitch. It's Saturday, April 26th or the 27th?
27th, I think.
April 27th. Or March 27th, I'm sorry. Yeah.
All right. It's a little bit dark, this light, but that's all right.
Yeah.
It's okay. When I come in closer, it'll be okay.
Okay.
The thing is that your tone and your tan and the things are very similar, but it's fine. You're visible.
I could probably move a few lights around and adjust light level if you want.
No, this is all right. I'll
Okay.
do this. Okay, first of all, I mean, what I usually do is first start talking. It's funny talking to me with this thing on and the camera going, but
Yeah.
don't worry about that. Just look at me. I'm not mic'd anyway, so
Okay.
You're talking to me, and if you happen to look at the camera, don't get nervous. Is okay too. I mean, there's no problem with that.
Okay.
Well, I usually start out talking about what people work, what they do for work, and things like that. So just to get to relax.
Sure.
Yeah, so.
Well, I work at United Parcel Service, which is, being a big corporation the way it is with very old ideals, it's sometimes rough working there. They have very high standards, and they have a sort of a one image they expect all their people to live up to. And
that's great. What kind of image do you think it is?
It's a very conservative image. They believe you live your job 24 hours a day. And and to some degree, I live up to that.
Certainly, in terms of the time you go to work and when you come
Yes,
home.
it's a very long day. The standard for work is it's generally accepted that you work a 10 to a 12-hour day for full-time management, and it's not so bad because everybody there does the same thing.
So you go into work at like 5:30 and you leave at 5. It's 10 hours.
Yes, so I go in at 5:30 in the morning, leave at 5 in the evening. So it's about 11 and a half hours I'm there.
Do you enjoy this work, or do you?
I enjoy it because it's real challenging. Also, I've done a number of different jobs for the company. Right now I'm an industrial engineer, which is a problem solver. And I really love what I'm doing now. I've done a lot of different jobs. I've run a terminal for them, a regular delivery terminal. I've gone on the road and I've determined time allowances for driver delivery. I've worked some special projects for them. And right now I control productivity for the sort facility. We call 1400 South Jefferson Street.
Yeah. What is productivity? You mean you keep the...
I determine what is a fair amount of work, packages per hour used to process through the building, what is a reasonable amount of time to allot them, and how much time are they using, and where do they sit according to my standards, the country's standards. How productive are they?
Yeah. So you're in, it sounds to me like it's a pretty critical thing for a company like you.
Yes, it is, and it's critical to cost control. I'm also involved in any purchases or acquisitions for my sort, both long range and short range. If they're looking to purchase or add something to the building, I'm actively involved in it, and they can't purchase anything without going through me. And I do a lot of long range planning, so I calculate up what we're going to need 5 years from now, what we'll need 10 years from now, how many packages will we be sorting, and will we be sorting them at my building, or are we going to send them to a different building? So a lot of that's involved.
Sounds like a pretty complicated.
Yeah, it is. It's very complicated.
And you've been with the company how many years?
11 years.
So you know a lot of, you've probably been through several divisions and you know a lot of...
Yes, I've worked in many different buildings, many different size buildings, from small delivery buildings where I used to open the door and call the snow plow when it snowed, and I'd call the people to mow the grass out in front when it was time, to big buildings like where I work today, where we have multiple pieces of property spread around a 5-city block area, and coordinating movements of semis between lots, things like that.
How large is this facility by comparison to the rest of the United States? Is Chicago a fairly important?
Yes, Chicago in general is one of the most important areas of the country, but we have 3 of the largest buildings that are all within several miles of each other. And I operate one of the buildings. I control the productivity at one building of the 3. And as far as my building and its surrounding buildings goes, mine is probably one of the largest. It's certainly the heaviest volume. It runs, it's considered the largest sort. Excuse me.
It's all right.
Because being in the middle of the country, we're a go-between. We take packages from one coast and we bring them to the other.
Yeah. So it's Chicago's traditional position there, which is a strength. I mean, it's a strength.
Right, the same thing that made Chicago the town it is. It's all railroads come into Chicago.
It's all trucks.
Yes.
Oh, you probably use railroads.
Yes, railroads are a very key part of our system, because any packages going a long distance don't actually travel over the road. They're put into semis, and then those semis go piggyback on the rails.
Yeah.
We're probably one of the largest users of the railroads that there is.
You know, I used to use, it's strange, when I was in college, UPS used to do, I don't know if you still do, you've probably gotten too expensive, but I had a lot of books to transport, and that was the best way of transporting books. You'd call them.
Oh, sure. We do that all the time.
Special box, they wanted a specification. As I remember, I may be wrong, they liked boxes of a certain size, and you had them packed, and then they...
We're not specific about what size you use, although...
That was, I remember, maybe...
Excuse me.
Yeah, I didn't know that, because I used to have them always in these book boxes, and they'd pick them up.
Yeah, we'll use any box. We prefer not to use a reused box, because traditionally there'll be other labels on the packaging, and there's a risk of it going to the wrong place.
Now, what should we do? What about the telephone? If it rings, should we leave it, or do you want to answer it?
Oh, we can just leave it. The answering machine will pick it up in 4 rings.
Oh, okay. How popular are you?
Not that popular.
We're in the middle of a very serious discussion.
Yeah.
That's all right.
I could take the phone off the hook if you'd rather that.
The wonderful thing about videotape is that you don't have
You can clip it and take it out.
It doesn't matter. No, the main thing is it's not expensive.
I wanted to stop sometime today and get the speakers from you, the little cameras.
Oh, yes.
Around town thing, and it doesn't have a second set of
So you have to... Because
So
someone's on videotape without knowing it.
Yeah. I could just as easily take the phone off the hook and it wouldn't ring then.
The one thing you might, would you mind, is there some way I could easily, whatchamacallit, could we turn the voice down?
It doesn't have a voice control on it.
It doesn't have voice control?
No.
Okay, well, why don't we just go in, and if it bothers us again, we'll do it.
Okay. It's no big deal to take it off the hook, though. It'll probably be the easiest thing.
Yeah, but then you miss your calls and everything, and we can't,
they'll get a busy signal and they'll call back.
Okay, well then, you want to...
Okay.
I can do it. It's much easier for me now.
Okay. Could you get, I'm wired. Could you get me more water?
Yeah.
Thanks.
When we take a break, I'm going to stop this for a second.
Okay.
Did it beep yet? Or is it?
I didn't hear it.
Isn't there usually a little voice that goes on and says,
Yeah.
"You should hang up"? There it is.
There it is. That took a long time to come out.
We'll wait for it to stop.
Yeah.
It goes on for a minute or two. Of course, I'm recording all this. That's good. You look good. You can't see yourself. I won't show you yourself.
No, I'd rather not see it.
Oh, why? I mean, you could. Afterwards, I can show it.
Well, yeah, afterwards you can play it.
It's weird to have a camera on you, I think. Everyone gets a little nervous.
I think so, yeah.
But then, but let me underline that if there's anything you don't want to talk about, even if we've talked about it personally, just
Okay.
we know each other, if you feel uncomfortable about it, you don't have to talk about it. I mean,
Okay.
And if I push in that direction, just don't talk about it. You know, it's
Okay.
up to you to do what you want.
Okay.
Okay, we were back where we were talking about you're working for UPS, and I was, you know, so
Yes.
it sounds to me so you have a very responsible job. It's
Yes, and I'm really relied on to be there every day.
yeah.
I don't have the option to just call in sick.
You don't have.
No.
What happens if you're sick?
Well, certainly they would get along without me, but things just wouldn't run as productively as when I'm there to do the problem solving.
Yeah. So you're really critical to what goes
Yeah,
on.
I really am. So
Do you?
I would just naturally, I don't call in sick. I remember once about 3 years ago I called in sick one day.
Oh, that's an episode that we might go back to.
And it was only because I had a high fever.
Really?
And when you have a high fever and you're delirious and you just don't stand up,
Yeah.
it's not right that you go in.
Yeah. So
But other than that, I don't see a reason to call in sick.
your family, though, I want to just add a note here that
Yes.
your family at first was opposed to your getting this job. Is that not?
Yes, actually they helped me get the job. It sounded like a wonderful idea because I've always loved hard work. I really enjoy the basic concepts that hard work is rewarded by promotion. And I've always experienced that in all my jobs. Any job I've held when I was very young, I progressed very quickly. When I was in high school, I was a part-time manager of a shoe store while I was still in high school because I showed the responsibility it took to run the place at an early age. And I expressed those ideals to my parents and to somebody at UPS, and they felt that they were good ideals and that I was worthy of, a worthy asset to UPS. So they asked me if I'd be interested in an entry-level job at UPS, and my parents thought it was a great idea too. So I did change jobs and I went to UPS. Absolutely rock bottom job, entry. About as low as it gets. I washed cars in the middle of the night.
Oh my God.
And in the cold weather, that was really a horrible job, washing every truck every night.
Every truck.
Every night. Scrub the tires, clean the interior. So.
Also, is that why UPS has always got trucks that look kind of good?
Yes. Originally, our motto was that we did not advertise. Our basic concept was we felt the only advertising we would ever do was our clean-cut driver in a clean uniform, well-pressed, and a clean vehicle. And that was our advertising. And if for years, you'll be aware that there have been no UPS commercials. Up until 5 years ago, we came out with our first commercial at the Super Bowl. Ever. First commercial ever.
That's amazing. So there you were working at nights. Is that why your parents
Yes.
didn't like it then eventually? They didn't like the idea that you were out there every night with the...
Well, I guess I realized immediately after starting at UPS that it was exactly what I was looking for. I was looking for rewards for hard work. And what I saw there was it was just a whole mesh of people that wanted to succeed so much. Everybody was struggling for that promotion, and I really liked that. I enjoyed the competition. It was just a real competitive environment to be the best and to be seen. Everybody had goals. I only plan to be doing this for a couple of years, and I'm hoping to get promoted. And that the flavor there was just beautiful. And UPS promotes from within. They do not hire from outside the company for their upper level positions. They select from the company first, and then they look into the outside.
God, so there's tremendous incentive.
So the incentive there is just unlimited, and there's no limit to how high you can go in the company. So it has a lot of potential there, and I saw that. Loved that flavor right away. So immediately I got right into the drive of things and started competing for those positions. And within my first couple of months, I was climbing already.
Really?
After 3 months, I got my first move. I moved from washing cars. They moved me into a sort position. Somebody from somewhere else in the company spotted me washing cars and said, "Your wasting is a valuable asset there. We need him in a sort facility somewhere." And I went from sorting packages. I sorted packages for 9 months. and somebody else came along and said, "You're wasting a valuable asset there. We need him up here on a skilled sort." And it climbed and climbed, and then eventually I became a full-time driver and went into full-time management. And it's actually been that way ever since I've been in full-time management. People keep saying, "You're wasting a valuable asset there, bring him over here." I've had a lot of different opportunities to do different jobs.
So you really have a broad, is that typical of people there, or is it
Yes.
the ones who climb?
Yes, our UPS management philosophy is that it's rather unusual for an hourly to have as much cross-training as I've had. Because I moved around a lot, and I moved very quickly. In a matter of 4 years as an hourly, 5 years as an hourly with the company, I did every job in the company that there is. Everything from the bottom to a driver's position.
Jesus. So why were your parents opposed to this? What was the,
Well,
this was way back, right in the
yes,
beginning.
they saw this driving ambition in me, and the fact that I put my job above everything else. It was the most important thing in my pyramid. And I think that kind of scared them. They'd never seen anything take charge of me like that before. And they visualized it as the company using me, where in fact maybe I'm using the company to get what I want.
Yeah, or it could be both. I
Right.
mean,
It's a mutual situation. We're getting what we need from each other.
Yeah. That's what is impressive about the way you describe it, is that they're willing to give rewards and quickly give rewards if you
Yes.
perform well. So. Of course, I wonder sometimes, who knows what someone who doesn't perform well happens to them. I mean,
Well, people that don't perform well just stay where they're at, and they're very stationary. And I've worked with many of those people, hard workers that just don't have the ambition to climb, that will work for years at the job.
yeah.
I go back to the sort facility where I started 11 years ago. People I sorted with are still sorting.
Yeah. That's amazing, isn't it?
Mhm.
I think
Yes.
that's true in many places, in many kinds of
Right.
business. And
The particular facility I work on right now, in Jefferson Street, we have hourly employees, full-time sorting hourly people there that are now in their 60s, that have been sorting since they were 18.
yeah.
Sorting packages for 40 years.
Jeez.
And they just have no ambition to go any farther than that.
But they must do it because they want to do it. I mean, or maybe not. Maybe it's the only job they can do, and they
Yeah, a lot of the lower level jobs are unskilled,
yeah. So they can't.
and there's no ambition for them to develop a skill. They've never wanted to develop a skill. Certainly we give them opportunities to develop their skill if they feel like going farther as an hourly person.
You didn't start though with a full education, right? You started UPS right after high school, isn't that right?
Yes, I was 18 years old when I started there, and I went to school while I was an hourly employee, and I finished as a management person.
So you went to school for quite a while.
Yes, well, it was a series of about 5 years.
Yeah. That's not so long, actually. You
No.
worked hard at that too.
Yes, I did, very, very hard. But of course, as I was working as an hourly, most of the time I was working part-time. Washing trucks in the middle of the night was part-time work. Sorting packages is part-time work.
Oh, I see. So then.
So I worked part-time, making a good enough salary to support myself very comfortably and pay for school.
Did you live at home at that time?
No, actually, I had moved out of the house when I was 18 years old.
Right. That moves us in a direction that I want to move in. Then,
Mhm.
right? Yeah. Why did you move out at 18? Just because you wanted to get out of home, or?
I moved out because I wanted things to be better between my family and me. And I saw that my father's personality and mine were very much at odds. The two of us were constantly head-to-head, strong personalities and strong-willed. And my father feels he's the king of his castle. Anybody that lives in his house has to live by his rules. And he's got very regimented rules about his life. And that's fine, I respect that. I also have very regimented rules about the way I live my life, but there were places where we didn't see eye to eye, and we were very much at odds because of that. That coupled with the fact that I was a very problem child when I was young, and there was a lot of hostility there left between us at that point in time. So by separating ourselves, I actually, at that point in time, I thought someday it would become we would become closer, because I saw that when we could be perfectly fine if we would not see each other in his house for several days, everything would be wonderful. And I really didn't feel the hostilities as strongly. But as soon as we were put together, sitting at one table together, the hostility would grow.
Awesome. Literally, it was an idea of yours. You really you thought the separation would help.
Yes, I thought that eventually, by my moving out, someday we would become closer.
Yeah. You wanted to?
And yeah, I think everybody wants to be close to their parents, and they want to feel that their parents love them. I didn't feel that back then. And I had a lot of hostility towards my parents. I think a lot of the things I did when I was in high school, I did maliciously just to sort of lash back at my parents.
Yeah. I want to get to some of that, but I think it would be important I want to go about it in a different way than our discussion. When was it that you came out?
It was rather late. I was either 21 or 22. Actually, I had a very happy heterosexual life up until that point. I really had no concept of what homosexuality was about. I thought I was living a very happy life. I certainly had my share of girlfriends. I guess that's really where the problem started, was that there was a girl I loved when I was back in high school. And that sort of hurt me deeply, because I honestly feel I felt love for her. And things didn't work out very well for us. And after that point, I was always looking for a woman to fall in love with. And I went from woman to woman to woman looking for what I thought was love. And I finally came to my own analysis that maybe what I was looking for as love wasn't how beautiful a woman was or how good she was to me, but rather a personality. And that's what I began looking for, was a person. It almost seemed less important whether it was a man or a woman. And I started having strange thoughts about maybe I'll just stay single and have close friends, because some of my male friends just made me feel good, and I felt wonderful with their company. And strictly on a monogamous level, I just felt comfortable with them, and I didn't understand why.
Yeah. What do you mean? Not sexual? Or
Nothing sexual. That's what I mean.
Yeah, I want to get a closer, tighter shot here for this. That you can keep talking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just nothing sexual. Just a comfortable feeling with them, and I didn't understand what the feeling was.
You didn't. That's
No, really didn't.
In retrospect, when you think back about it, do you think there was a sexual component to it, or?
It's very possible there was.
Yeah.
I was very heavily like blanketing it in my subconscious, though, so that I didn't really realize what was going on. And I really had no idea myself that someday I would end up being homosexual. So.
Okay.
Gay, whatever.
What is the word you prefer to use? Do you have any words that you prefer using, or?
I prefer using the word fag.
Oh, well then do, because I know queer is very,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all right if you feel comfortable with that.
Oh,
I'd
sure.
like you to use the word you feel comfortable
Okay.
with. Yeah.
Well, I'll use a lot of different terms for it. I really will, depending on the level of which I'm talking about it. When I'm talking on a very serious level, I call myself a homosexual.
Yeah.
When I'm talking lightheartedly about it, I'll just use the word fag in a very flip fashion.
That's all right. You don't seem like a fag, though. But it's all
Yeah.
right. It's good to use those words, though, I think.
Oh, sure.
I think it's important to use them.
Yeah.
And like queer, this whole point of Queer Nation is to use the word queer so that we take it back.
Right.
Yeah. So I wanted to, so you, it was a slow process, it sounds like to me.
Yes, and
you first became like emotionally aware, like you were interested in personality, support.
yes, very much so. And at that point in time, I really thought that maybe I would never find love, and that was going to be all right for me. And instead, I would just look for personalities that made me happy, and I'd surround myself with personalities that I enjoyed. And I've always been that type of person. When I look for friends, I look for personalities in people. Personalities that make me feel warm inside.
Yeah, yeah. So that's always been a slant of yours, in other words. The physical,
Yes.
Is the physical not important? It's obviously important to everyone, but I mean.
The physical is much less important to me than a personality and a feeling in somebody.
Yeah. I want to go back here a moment. So let's tack an age. This was, how close to when you moved out of home was this going on?
I'd say probably when I was 17. I went through a lot of changes when I was 17. In my senior year of high school was when all this happened. With the, I was really searching for what was it that made me happy. And of course, I was a very confused kid. It's kind of funny for somebody that is as confused as I was at that point in time, trying to find out what makes them happy. I understood a little bit about psychology and things like that because I had taken psychology classes in high school, senior year of high school. And I knew that there was a means to an end, that everything you do in life is to make yourself happy. And that ultimately that's what I was looking for to do with myself, was to make myself happy.
But you didn't,
emotionally.
Yeah, but you didn't have an idea yet. What?
That's right. I really had no clue as to what it would eventually be.
It's probably even more complex than just being gay, but certainly if you are gay and you don't, and you deny it, it's very hard to become.
Yes, because I've always believed with my whole heart that truth is the most important thing in life. And not only truth in what you say, but truth in what you believe. You have to believe in something that's true, and you have to live the truth. And once you know the truth about yourself, to live something else would be a lie.
Did you?
And that would be nothing but deceit. So.
That's right. Did you take, so it started at 17, and did you have some of these thoughts then too? I mean, it's hard to discriminate this, but...
Yeah, I had no sexual thoughts.
But the ideas of what you're saying now, were those ideas developing then? Or
Yes, they were developing when I was 17.
Yeah. You did pretty well, I think, in school, right? You were...
Yes, I was, as a person in high school, I was always on the National Honor Society all 4 years. I took very difficult courses. My IQ was rather high, although I can't really recall what the number is right now. I always had a high IQ. Scored very well on things like SAT and ACT courses. I'm not sure which test it is you take to get into college. I think that's your SATs. After I took my SATs, I had many offers from schools that were looking for me. Of course, I had the military looking for me to be an officer in the military. I got several scholarships. So I certainly didn't have any problems academically. Socially, it was a little different. Very different.
Why pursue that? What is...
Well, somewhere around the time when I was preparing to go to high school, I began becoming my own personality. I felt it was important for me at that time to be my own personality. Before that, I was a projection of what my parents had wanted me to be. And my parents wanted me to be something that was socially acceptable and fit a mold that they expected. They lived very structured, formatted lives. My parents were both professionals. My mother working for the church, my father working for the government. And when I was young, the family life was somewhat of a dysfunctional family. I remember many fights going on. My family was a devout Catholic family, and they felt that, according to the structure of the Catholic Church, that divorce is forbidden. And despite the fact that they were having marital problems, they would keep the family together until they raised the kids. And of course, I was the youngest child. And as time went on, I think the hostilities got worse and worse between them, so that by the time I was growing up, it was probably at its peak. And it was a kind of an awkward situation for me, because I took most of the brunt for everything that was going wrong in the family. I was yelled at for the stupidest things, I remember.
You have what, how many sisters? Right?
I have 3 older sisters. 2 of them had already been out of the house by the time I was growing up, and at least my social development. My 2 older sisters were out of the house, and my 3rd sister, who was still older than me, she was kind of the pampered child in the family. She was both my father and my mother's favorite, and I got yelled at for everything she did. It's just ridiculous. So I think psychologically that really wore on me when I was growing up. I was driven very hard to succeed, even as a young child. B's were forbidden. You had to have A's on your report card. You were punished for a B. And so that was kind of the psychological training that I had when I was growing up. And so somewhere around 8th grade, when it became my social development, I decided to start honing my own personality. One thing I left out that sort of contributed to the dysfunctional family is, looking back now, I realized that both of my parents were probably what you'd call functional alcoholics. They fit a social mold, and they drank what they called socially, but it's what I considered to be, looking back now, to have been more than was acceptable. I remember my father coming home from a hard day's work with that horrible, stressed look on his face, and the first thing he went for was a bottle. And he'd have 4 or 5 drinks before dinner to relax, and maybe a couple of drinks after dinner to relax, and fall asleep on the couch. I remember.
Did this contribute at all to how he treated you, or?
It's very possible it contributed. I remember my mother, the same thing, coming home from a hard day. We'd be out shopping and traffic would be a mess, and she'd drive like a maniac, yelling and screaming all the way home, and get home and take a drink right away. The first thing, before she put groceries away or anything, just had to have that drink to relax. And of course, that seemed like the socially acceptable thing to do, was take a drink to relax.
Right.
And I think those things are patterned into what a person feels is acceptable. So as a young person, I thought you took a drink to relax from very, very young. And I always took my first drinks at home. I used to drink out of my father's drinks all the time. Family functions, the whole family'd be around, and I was allowed to drink from a very young age, 9, 10.
So it was a...
So by the age of 12, I was already drinking regularly on my own. There was always plenty of booze in the house. And it was at my disposal all the time. So as I was starting to have stress in my life as a very young child, I was drinking out of the liquor cabinet just like my parents did. And it started a very bad pattern for me. It made a pattern of being an addictive person, addicted to something to relieve pressure.
And this is very
young age.
In the context of, you were talking about at 12 when you started developing your own way of personality. Yes. So this is connected to.
Yes. So sometime when I'm about 12 now, part of my honing my personality was I felt that I was stressed by the things that were going on around me in the family life. So I was entitled to drink to relieve my pressure just as my parents did.
Yeah.
So around 8th grade, I started drinking at home. And of course, when I went to be a freshman in high school, I have all that added responsibility and added freedom. I began drinking quite regularly and doing other drugs. Always looking for some way to relieve the stresses of growing up and things like that.
So you started doing drugs in high school, early high school?
Yes. At some point while I was in high school, I started developing feelings of hostility towards my parents for treating me the way they did when I was young, for what I considered possibly to be psychological abuse. Constantly being yelled at to fit this pattern. And of course, because they expected a pattern out of me, I let them see what they wanted to see. They never saw the side of me that drank. They never saw the side of me that went out with my friends and smoked pot in the alley all the time. In very much the same way as they hid their drinking. They would come home and pour that quick cocktail before dinner when nobody was there. Stand there at the liquor cabinet and do shots out of the cabinet.
Oh my God.
Not a pretty sight, not at all.
And so you did a similar thing. You developed.
I developed a pattern identical to the pattern after my parents, and that's what learned behavior is all about. Somebody that's young and impressionable develops those thoughts from their parents.
Where did it lead you, all of this?
Well, eventually.
You did well in high school. I mean.
Yes, and that was, doing well in high school was part of the keeping the image up, because I was not only keeping up an image for my family, I was keeping up an image for the school. Socially, I had to do well and achieve. But psychologically, I did what I wanted with my life, which was drive it like a stake into the ground. Gradually, my drug abuse just became worse and worse. I hung with a very large social crowd that was very heavily into parties, drugs, and drinking. I had fake IDs from the time I was 15, and from the time I was 15, I was regularly buying liquor every night of the week, large quantities, 5 to 10 cases of beer.
How did you
for me and my friends.
Did you pitch in, all of you?
Yes, everybody would pitch in. And of course, I've worked since I was very, very young. My parents have an ideology from the time I was very young that if you want something, you go after it yourself. I think allowances were cut off sometime when I was in 8th grade. I stopped receiving an allowance, and if I wanted school clothes, I went out and earned money for it. There were plenty of ways to earn money. My father would pay me to do jobs. Most of the time, one of my grandmothers would give me jobs, and I always appreciated that.
So you
cutting neighbors' lawns, things like that.
That stuff. So you continued to do both things, to work well and to do the drugs.
Yes.
Parallelly. How did this all, I mean, it had to come to a head, right? You couldn't, we know that in a sense at 18 you left it. Is this involved in why at 18 you didn't go on to college, or even though you got scholarships? And
Yes, I did go to college when I was 18. Mm-hmm. Directly after high school, I did go to a part-time college. Mm-hmm. And that continued for 5 years.
I guess the best way to ask use, and it's unfair because I know some of this we've talked, but I think
Sure.
it's dramatic that, I mean, if you were to focus on the central experience of that time, I think that's really important. I think that was very
Yeah. See, what I had set myself up for was I was living the life that I wanted to, which was a life directly in rebellion to my parents. And that's what I wanted to live. And I patterned myself that way all through high school, was to do something opposite of what my parents wanted to do. And I was having a lot of fun, I thought, at the time. Drinking, doing drugs, and things like that. And I gradually became more of a juvenile delinquent than anything else. I was a horrible problem child to my parents through high school. I went on to dealing drugs. I was involved in grand theft when I was in my senior year in high school, where I had stolen large quantities of merchandise and was selling it to buy drugs with. And it all finally came to a head sometime around my senior year in high school, where there was so much going on in my life that I could not hide it from my parents any longer. They knew I was using drugs. They knew I was that I was a juvenile delinquent, what I was doing at nights, not coming home at nights, things like that while I was in high school. And it was kind of a rude awakening for them, a revelation that all of a sudden they've been deceived for years. I'm not the person that I had given the impression that I was. And that's when the hostility just got very hot and heavy. And for a solid year, we were at each other's throats. My father yelling and screaming, locking me out of the house, sleeping the night on the porch because I was deadbolt locked out of the house. And then me in retaliation just not coming home for 2 days at a time. The hostilities went back and forth many, many times, and it got very vicious. And that's at the point where I knew something had to happen. Either we were going to kill each other, or I had to move out of the house. And that prompted me to get off on my own. Even though we were constantly at each other's throats, they were always supportive of me. And that's at this point in time when this was all coming up with me, starting with UPS, was when I was 18 years old. And they thought, well, at least he'll do something constructive with his life. Because at this point, there was this year of torment between us. They thought I was, when they found out I was doing drugs, they had these horrible thoughts that I'm going to be a pusher and hang around in schoolyards and push drugs on children. So they were at least glad to see that I had work morals.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. And through all of this, there was no question of the gay thing yet. I mean, this.
No,
Toward the very end, you were starting to think about what you really liked in a person. But
yes, and that was all something very personal going on in me, and I had no clue of where it was going to lead. Of course, over a period of time, things kept coming to a head. I never did stop doing drugs through all of this, and my drug use just became worse and worse. And of course, shortly after high school, but before I started at UPS, my drug abuse had elevated to the point where I could no longer function. And I ended up in what I call the lost and found on several occasions, near drug overdoses. And I was into some pretty heavy drugs by then, PCPs, things that make you feel insane while you're under their influence. So I was elevated to a point that was a very sad existence. It really was. Certainly, I had work motivation. I had that going for me. But psychologically, I wasn't any person that I liked. I really hated the person that I was. And I hated the fact that my parents and me were at each other's throats. I ended up in the hospital on several occasions as a result of my drug abuse. And I hated myself so much that I really thought at that point maybe it would be easier to end my life. And I attempted suicide on several occasions with drug overdoses. And the one time in particular was very quite nearly successful when I took large quantities of arsenic poisoning, and I just thought it would be better to have the fighting over with my parents. I knew that the drug abuse was not what I wanted. It wasn't making me happy. I hated the person I was. And it seemed like a logical solution at that point in time.
Yeah. I want one note here. When you say you hated the person you were, you mean the person that was leading two such different lives and
Yes.
couldn't keep them together.
Yes. Trying to live two lives is a horrible mess. It really is.
So then,
What I really hated about it, it wasn't truth. There was no truth there.
so this is pretty, but then that time, then with arsenic, you almost died.
Yes, I did. At that one point in time, the one time I very quite nearly did kill myself with the large quantities of arsenic, probably about 1,000 times a lethal dose of arsenic in my body.
My God, how did you survive that?
Well, the way I had ingested it, it coagulated in my body, and it was very slowly being absorbed. My body was having trouble absorbing it because I drank it with dairy products that caused it to coagulate in my body. And
Lucky.
yes, and it's a slow reaction. It's not a real fast-acting drug. Arsenic takes a while to work in your body. The way in particular that I absorbed it through my stomach.
How were you discovered? Did you do this at home?
Yes, I did it at home in my room, and my parents discovered me and realized something was very, very wrong. Knew that I had taken something and had no idea, and they dragged me off to the hospital. Of course, at this point in time, I was vomiting and everything like that, so I was completely out of control. And they just took me to the emergency room, and in the emergency room, they started taking samples, trying to find out what it was that I had taken. And
You didn't offer any information? Or
at first I didn't, and I became very scared after some of the reactions started happening. I could feel heart palpitations increasing more and more, and they had me hooked up to all sorts of apparatus because they didn't know what to expect. There were little electrodes connected all over my body. I was strapped down at the shoulders and the legs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then there were
Convulsions.
right, and convulsions, and then they were drawing things out of my stomach to take samples. And at that point, I just decided to tell them. I don't know particularly what reason I had for telling them what I had taken. And of course, at that point in time, they had never dealt with arsenic poisoning at the hospital. This was something completely new for them. So they didn't know what avenue they were going to take, and they were just pulling manuals out and starting to read.
It gives you a lot of confidence.
Yeah, and it was
Patient dies.
exactly. They really didn't know what avenue to take, and they were calling in everybody they could. They started just standard procedures to try and remove it from your system every possible way they can. And I remember it was just hours and hours of terror laying there on the table. On the heart monitor as the heart palpitations were going on, and then my heart would stop, and they'd bring the electrodes in and an electric shock start my heart again, and then I'd go for a while and it would stop again, and then they'd come back with a quick shock to bring me back right away. So they worked continuously for about 10 hours. I was in the emergency room, and it was very traumatic. I was awake through the entire thing, remembering every moment. It's a very traumatic moment for me, realizing that you're that close to the edge. I think psychologically I died there that day there on the operating table, in the emergency room table. And
You were aware, and what was I know this is a silly, like, journalistic line, but I mean, what was going through your mind? I mean, were you just trying to focus on what was happening, or?
Laying there at that point in time, I said to myself that this is as bad as it can possibly get. I hurt everywhere from what they were doing to me. Continuously, there were just people all over me doing things to me. They had these horse needles, and every 5 minutes they had to poke me with a horse needle. And they were injecting something the consistency of maple syrup into all my tissues, all over my body. I was just a giant pincushion where they just kept pushing it in. And it hurt like a Charlie horse as it would go into the body because it was so thick.
Yeah.
They were just injecting me with the syrup and forcing things through my body completely. Large quantities of charcoal paste. They just pumped charcoal paste through my system continuously.
Oh, God, it sounds... And
Yes.
in the meantime, your heart is stopping. And there's
Yes,
nothing.
all of the entire time. People are pumping while somebody else is injecting, and somebody else would pop the electrodes on my chest. It was just a horrible feeling. It went on for hours and hours that way. And I remember thinking to myself that there was nothing worse than that moment in my life. There's no physical pain I could ever experience in this world that would ever be worse than what I was feeling while I was laying there on the table. And for all practical purposes, life was pretty much over there. I honestly thought I was going to die that day. I felt the whole thing was going to culminate because I heard the doctors reading in the book over my head, as you know, they're reading from the book about the heart palpitations leading to a live death, and you know, they're saying, well, if he dies, he's going to die with his eyes open and all this other stuff, because they really weren't sure they were going to save me at this point.
They were reading that aloud?
They were all collaborating. They were working as a study group. They didn't know what else to do at that point in time. They weren't sure that they were going to save me at that point. And I honestly felt I was going to die that day. When my heart stopped, I could hear very clearly in the background the heart monitor stopping and the long beep sound, and just the feeling that everything was fading away, and your whole body is like, it was a feeling almost like you were falling back inside of yourself, like a balloon being popped, and then the electrodes and coming back.
So you were, it sounds like many states of consciousness with,
yes.
Sometimes you were aware, sometimes it was just what was happening to you.
Sometimes there was so much happening at once that I was just overwhelmed with what was going on around me. And it just became a blur after a while, you know, for hours and hours laying there.
Was there some point at which you really decided that you did want to live, that you wanted to? Did you cooperate? What were you cooperating with? Did you want? Was it not like that?
There wasn't really a choice of cooperation there. I was so completely inhabilitated that I had no thoughts on it. There was no thoughts to be had. I was given no choices while I was there. This was happening to me, whether I liked it or not. And as I laid there, I had to think to myself that it couldn't possibly get any worse in life. It just couldn't get any worse. And I just remember laying there as maybe around the 9th or the 10th hour, as things were starting to slow down, and I now was getting the shots every 10 minutes and 15 minutes instead of every 5 minutes in my body. And they were quite confident they were starting to relax and the doctors were going away. And there was a feeling that I was going to make it. And I was laying there thinking to myself, I couldn't believe I had made it through it. I honestly didn't believe I had made it through it. I thought that was going to be the last day of my life. And all of a sudden I was laying there thinking that this is, laying awake thinking, I remember at one point somebody coming by me, a nurse, telling me what time it was somewhere around the last hours while I was there, saying something like, do you know what time it is? And I just kind of looked at her. Obviously, I couldn't speak because there were large tubes in my mouth, and she was looking for me to shake my head or something. And she says, it's the next morning. And it was something like 9 o'clock in the morning. And I just remembered thinking to myself that it was like, it was the start of a new day, but it was a completely different day. It was a day in somebody else's life now. Because there had been so much commotion, and psychologically I was completely surrendered that day. I was so helpless that psychologically my old will had died right there that day. And it was now the dawn of a new day, a different person. And I was completely incapacitated, and I didn't know where my life was going to go. I had no ideas, and I couldn't begin to think what direction my life was going to take. So completely, it was almost, for me, it was like a death and a birth. I was new, and I didn't know where I was going to go, what I was going to do, and it wasn't mine to think about.
That's interesting. So this is the central. That was the experience that.
Yes.
That was what it all led to. We're gonna stop here one second.
Okay.
Is that all right?
That's fine.
And I'm going to. Yeah. Okay. We're recording.
Okay.
What I'd like to go back to is, I mean, that was your being gay was really not a factor at the point at which you tried to kill yourself, right?
No, it certainly wasn't. Although, looking back now, I'm sure that it was subconsciously, it was a factor going on inside of me. I realized that at this point in time I was having this crisis about what I was looking for. I was looking for a person, and I was already asking myself, was I going to find love? What was it that made me happy? I just couldn't figure out what it was that made me happy. I would take qualities that I saw in Carrie, the girl I loved, and try and pull from that. What was it that I loved about her? And could I find those qualities elsewhere?
Did you have any success in that? Or?
Yes, I mean, I found some wonderful women that I was with, but there was always something missing there. And it might have been the fact that the sex wasn't very good.
Was the sex?
At least not for me.
Was it ever very good, do you think, with you?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, that's interesting. And yet you kept pursuing the heterosexual.
Yes, because naturally, my image that I was brought up with, I had no exposure to homosexuality except for a good friend of mine that was homosexual. But I didn't know firsthand what homosexual sex was. I didn't have a clue. At that point in time, I didn't even want to picture it. Because it wasn't the socially acceptable thing. And it just never crossed my mind.
Yeah. So you were, what was it that finally led to what was it that finally did it, that finally led to your being conscious of gay attractions, fag attractions, whatever you want to
Yes.
call it?
Well, actually, it relates back to this climactic point in my life with where I attempted suicide. After that stay there, I spent some time in the hospital, sorting through and with state doctors and things like that. And naturally, when you attempt suicide, it's a crime against the state, which is, I think, a ridiculous thing. But you're now a felon.
Is that true?
Yes. And adding insult to injury. So, of course, by police order, I had to see a psychiatrist and get counseling and things like that to have the state drop the charges. So, naturally, as a form of formality, I began seeing a psychiatrist. And I was actually quite glad to see a psychiatrist at that point in time. Thank God I hooked up with just a wonderful doctor that was very professional and knew no limits to what he wanted to investigate in my personality. And I honestly feel he was genuinely interested in me. And I think I proved that to him early on while I was still in the hospital and we were working together. I showed some character and some spunk because I didn't like what was going on in the hospital. I saw that they were running a business where they wanted to psychologically mute these poor people that were mentally ill there, and in a way they were perpetuating their illnesses. They were intentionally keeping these people there for years and years with the intention of making money off them for the years that they stay on the psycho floor. They give people sedative drugs that would cause mild hallucinations and things like that, and then sit them down with their psychiatrist and have them, you talk to the psychiatrist comes back with, oh yes, they're definitely nuts, they're not ready to go home, and of course they stay. And it's just a vicious circle, and I saw it happening to so many people. And it scared me at that point in time because I had signed over my entire life to this hospital, my life and my will, agreeing that I could not leave until it was by mutual consent.
You mean theirs and yours?
Theirs and mine.
Oh.
I was not free to leave when I felt like it. And it was quite scary to me because I had seen movies where people were held against their will in strange psychological twists, and now I was living it. Being given drugs that would sedate me, watching people in the bed next to me, completely incapacitated, just doing bizarre things, losing control of their bodily functions. One girl, I remember her tongue curling up all the time, and she had no idea her tongue would curl up while she was talking outside her mouth. Oh, it's just horrible. And people walking around sedated, and it was very comfortable for the hospital to have all these patients in a sedated manner because they're not hostile. They're being kept in close quarters, they're living there for months at a time, and they're not hostile because they're sedated. Of course, that's the way the hospital wants them. And in the sedated state, you can't get out of the hospital because your psychiatrist keeps coming back with a judgment that you're withdrawn. He's still acting withdrawn. Well, no shit, he's withdrawn. You're putting him on drugs. So, really one thing I have horrible regrets for at that point in time was that they weren't able to see that I was a psychologically addictive personality. At that point in time, they said, well, you're doing illegal drugs and you can't do that. I said, you drink a little bit, but drinking's healthy once in a while to relax, so keep on right on doing that and stop doing the illegal drugs. So this was the pattern for my life. And it just astounds me that these are professionals here in a hospital that I'm sure received tens of thousands of dollars of my insurance money, and they weren't qualified to see what was wrong with me at that point in time, that I was an addictive person.
But you did say this guy helped you, though, the psychiatrist.
Yes, the psychiatrist was wonderful, but the people in the hospital should have seen that, I really honestly feel with all my heart. And even the psychiatrist. But of course the psychiatrist saw my spunky nature and the fact that I, through my own will, refused to take the drugs any longer. And I began talking sense, and I told my psychiatrist exactly the way I felt about what was going on in the hospital. And I think he kind of took interest in that. And he decided that I certainly didn't belong in the hospital, because there was certainly nothing wrong with me. I had logical thought patterns and I had good ideas. And was certainly conscious about what was going on around me. So they let me out of the hospital, and we began quite extensive therapy where I'd see him all the time, and we just try and sort through my problems. And this was a wonderful opportunity for me, because what I had always wanted was somebody to help me cope with the whole situation of how I related with my parents, how I related with myself, the things I didn't understand. So we began tearing my personality down, one conflict at a time. We did a lot of that through hypnosis therapy, where you just relax, go into complete relaxation, and you talk about your inner feelings. And that's really all hypnosis is it's tearing away your inhibitions about social attitudes and the way you think you're supposed to react and the things you think you're supposed to say, And through complete relaxation, you dig back into your mind and you say what's really down there. And that's all that hypnosis really consists of. So we did a lot of hypnosis therapy, long sessions where he would bring me down a level of relaxation, look deeper and deeper and deeper, and then while I was in somewhat of I'm in a hypnotized trance, so that I physically can't feel my body. I'm so psychologically deep into my mind that I don't feel the body that I'm in. And we talk amongst ourselves. He'd ask me questions relating to deep issues, and then I'd respond. And I'd repeat them over and over. Sometimes he'd record them and play them back to me after I was out of the trance. And I would come to terms with each one of these things one at a time. This was part of my personality. We began with things like my resentments towards my parents for these kind of psychological abuse I felt when I was young. My feelings towards their functional alcoholism when I was growing up. The reasons why I did the juvenile delinquent things I did, to lash back at them and to get back at them for making me feel bad when I was young.
And then finally you did.
And we had peeled so many layers away, and I wasn't sure why I still was driven to come back there, because I wasn't psychologically happy. Here I had solved all these family issues and things in my life, and I understood why I did the things I did, but I didn't understand why I wasn't happy. And the doctor saw that there was still something else there, and he didn't know what it was at that point. So we started to go into dream psychology. We started talking about what types of dreams I had and what was my sex life like. And he kind of hitched onto this thing about me not feeling real happy about the sex. Certainly it was healthy heterosexual sex I was having. But I didn't have a good feeling about it. It didn't make me feel wonderful. And we dug deeper and deeper into that. We started to tear that down through my dreams, and we'd go through erotic dreams to rip down exactly what was it that made me tick. And at that point in time, we determined that yes, women made me sexually aroused, but also there were other things that sexually aroused me. And at that point we sort of delved into a theory of narcissism, that maybe an image of someone like myself actually somewhat sexually aroused me. And basically through a period of time we just determined, and he helped me come to terms with the fact that, yes, homosexual feelings were a part of my personality, and they could possibly be some of the barriers that I was experiencing in my sex life. And we also very carefully talked about the social implications of things like that. The fact that homosexuality is not very socially acceptable. And it was something that was going to have to be thought out very, very carefully. And certainly because I had never had any feelings up to this point, I wasn't even sure how I felt about it. Coming to terms with something like that, I had a girlfriend I was very happy with. I enjoyed doing wonderful social things with her, and the thought of not being able to go out to dinner together and go out to shows and go to parties together, it was kind of a crushing thought to me. And so I just had no feeling at all at that point that I would want to make any sort of change. I was very happy. Even though the sex may have been kind of so-so, there was no reason for me to change at that point. I think I'd like to add at this point that all through high school, as I was growing up, one of my closest personal friends had come to me and explained to me that he was gay. And we were best friends. There were 3 of us hung around as best friends all through high school. And we were so close. We would know what each other was thinking before we would say it and things like that. So when he told me that he was gay, I certainly had no feelings about it myself at that point because I didn't even know what being gay meant. And I promised him that I would always accept him for the same person that I always accepted him as. And I kept by that promise. I never thought of him any differently for having told me that he was gay, and I sort of accepted it. And at one point in time, I used to go out with my girlfriend, and I would drop my friend by a gay bar and come by later and pick him up after closing time, after I'd been out at the straight bar all night. And it was just a working relationship. We were still friends, even though this was an issue in his life. So somewhere at this point in time, when I was coming to terms with all of this, I had exposure to it now. And as I was coming to terms with this being a phase of my life, I wasn't sure what direction to take it in. I certainly knew where gay bars were, because I had already taken my friend there on frequent occasions. And we had kiddingly joked around about it, just coyly, but I still had no concept of what being gay was. I didn't know what a gay bar looked like. Oh, actually, I had been in one because I used to buy alcohol in one on the south side. There was a gay bar that had carry-out liquors, and I could go in there and present my bad IDs when I was underage, and of course they let me buy. And I'd take it out and go back to my girlfriend sitting in the car.
So that's how, so what happened that you, that's, so.
There was somewhat of a pre-exposure to this, even though it wasn't an issue in my life. I knew a little bit about gay life. I knew that there was meeting places that they went to. I knew that they had fun when they went out. And it was a little bit of curiosity in me. If nothing else, I just wanted to know more about it. So, one point several years after, maybe a year or two after, coming to terms with this with my psychiatrist, I just decided that one day I had to find out. Curiosity was killing me. So I went to a gay bar that I had taken my friend to quite frequently and dropped off in the corner. Actually, I dropped him off there that night, and I drove away, and I was on my way to come down to Rush Street, where I was meeting the rest of my friends. And I went about 5 blocks, and I just thought to myself, this is so silly. I'm curious. I want to know what's going on in there. Why am I hiding from it? So I just turned the car around, and I went back, and I parked out in front of the gay bar, where there was a bunch of boys standing around on the curb, and just began talking to some of them, and sat there for hours and hours talking to them, and they were just wonderful people, really true, genuine people that I liked. So I dove in that night with somebody, and I had my first experience that night with somebody very wonderful. It didn't last very long. I dated him for about a week at the same time as I was dating another girl, and he exposed me more fluently to what gay life was all about. He realized that I was very sheltered, and this was the first time I was actually in a gay bar in that capacity. And he brought me downtown to Chicago to sort of see what the rest of gay life is like, what a gay dance bar is. I had no concept of there being a gay dance bar. Meeting other gay people in a social scene. And this is all over the course of several weeks, 2 weeks. At that point, I decided that these were wonderful people, and for once, I was living a truth. This is what I wanted to do. I wanted to have friends, have fun, and there was something else there that I couldn't explain at that point. Sex all of a sudden was wonderful, and it had a sparkle to it that I never had when I was with my girlfriend. It was exciting. And decided that that was definitely what I wanted to do. So I went back to my girlfriend. I broke up with her. Just had to make it a clean break because I couldn't do both things at once. I broke up with her, and I decided to go on with a gay life. At this point also, as part of living a truth, I had met the best friend of this person I was seeing for the 2 weeks. And there was a particular glow in me. Every time I talked with him, there was just, my heart would pound like I had never felt before, ever before. And I couldn't understand why. I thought about him every hour of the day. And here we were just acquaintances through another friend. So I hunted him down, and I tracked him down and cornered him. And he became my first lover, and we were lovers for 2 years.
Oh.
So,
That was very early, right after you came out.
yes, several weeks after coming out.
You know, I was thinking a lot of gay people deal with this. They deal with this whole issue of leading a double life as a function of their being gay, of their coming out, whereas you have dealt with it in another term. So what's coming through loud and clear is that by the time you were gay, you had already decided you're leading a single life. You want to lead a
Yes.
peaceful life.
Yes, very definitely.
So it was positive in that sense, very positive.
Yes, my decision to live a gay lifestyle was actually was the truth for me. I was searching and prying for the truth in my life, and it was just a phase of the truth for me. Now, that's not the only truth I was looking for in my life. While this was going on, there are many other issues going on in my life. I mentioned before that drug abuse and alcohol abuse was a big factor in my development through high school and things. And I continued to have problems with alcohol and drugs this entire time. Even though psychologically I was becoming aware, I was continuously monitoring, and I was aware of the fact that there was a problem with abuse, and I didn't understand what to do about it. I would go from using the illegal drugs to using just alcohol because it was legal. And then I could see the alcohol getting out of control in my life, and I'd stop drinking, and I'd just do the illegal drugs only. And then I'd go for 6 months, and I'd say, what the hell, let's do everything. So this was a continuous process where I was using drugs and alcohol back to back. One addiction substituted for another to take away my problems, because it was a learned behavior in me. I had learned that this was the way to cope with problems. That continued to be a problem for many, many years in my life. When my first lover and I were together, his name was Jim. It was a sick relationship because of the drug abuse and the alcohol abuse. I think possibly had it not been there for the two of us, it could have been a wonderful relationship and maybe very healthy. But that's not the case. It continued to become an issue in my life. Now my career was developing very aggressively with United Parcel Service. I was exploring a truth in my sexuality, but there wasn't a truth in my way of coping with problems. So there was still something missing there. After my lover and I broke up, after the 2 years, I was now like 24 years old, and I was looking for something more in my life. I was living a very fast life. I had gotten in with a fast crowd. I was making good money, very good money, and I thought one of the more refined drugs, one of the quote-unquote non-addictive drugs, was cocaine at the time. And I've been heavily into cocaine since I was in high school. And it seemed like the drug of choice at the time. And it really took control of my life, completely took control of my life. I sunk all my finances into it. I lived my life around cocaine. And I was very close to a leading dealer in the Chicagoland area, so that I had unlimited access to it, more than I could afford even. I gave him all the money I could afford, and then I still got more, because we were close friends. And it really began to rule my life. And there was a point where I looked in the mirror, and there was nobody I knew looking back at me. I developed into a person I didn't recognize anymore. I could look myself in the mirror, and there was nobody in my eyes. It was a body standing there. It wasn't a person with a personality. Somebody I didn't like. I did not like them at all. It really came to a head for me when I could no longer control my life in a socially acceptable way. I had always kept up this image at work, in my family life. My family now saw me as this developing professional that was living a respectable life, turned around from being a juvenile delinquent. And everything looked so respectable. I was just progressing upward. I was somewhat of a yuppie, living on my own, having nice possessions. I furnished myself well, was doing well for myself, had a nice car, but still psychologically torn apart. Well, at this point, sometime when I was 24, it all just sort of came tumbling down. And it was sort of what I like to call reaching my bottom. I just couldn't keep it up any longer. I was really stretched to my wit's end, keeping up an image. I remember after weekends not remembering what I had done for entire weekends, waking up at home not knowing how I had gotten here, and finally, one crucial weekend, waking up in an alley in my underwear, like a day later. A whole day of my life was gone after I'd gone to a party on a Saturday night, and I woke up in an alley on Monday afternoon. A day of my life missing, not knowing how I got there, where my clothes went to. Just a very, very sad state. And I had missed a crucial day at work for which I was terminated. And the walls seemed to be crumbling down on me. And through the help of my direct boss at work, who was just a wonderful man, he helped me out a lot. He kind of peeled out of me what the problem was. We talked on the phone, and he helped me realize at that point that this didn't have to be the end there. It didn't have to be the end of my career with UPS. It didn't have to be the end of my social life with my family. And that I could start over if I wanted to clean all of the drugs out of my life. Because I leveled with him, and we talked very openly about the state I had reached. I felt there was nothing to lose at this point. I didn't work for the company anymore, and he had always been a confidant to me. What did I have to lose? And through his help, I was directed to a recovery facility called Lifeline. And that really, truly is a wonderful name for it, because it became my lifeline, the beginning of the rest of my life. They handled my psychological and my addictive problems with a professional management that was just beyond reproach. They believed in dealing with the individual problems, all of your problems in your entire life, and peeling away all of your problems. Now, actually, when I got there, they were quite happy to see that I had already dealt with quite a few of the problems that were in my life. I had one final problem in my life to deal with, which was cocaine addiction and alcoholism. So as far as they were concerned, I was a good prospect. And they decided to accept me. I stayed there for slightly over a month. And in that time, I just realized how wonderful life could be and how ridiculous it was that I was throwing my life away with allowing drugs to rule my life.
Yeah. That was how long ago?
That's now 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
So really my psychological awakening was at least my life coming to a whole and all the pieces coming together really began 5 years ago when I decided to give up drugs and alcohol.
That's interesting how that worked, how you had that crisis when you were younger, and then it took a while for you to finally abandon the alcohol, although your life had begun to
Right.
come together in other ways.
So in a social issue, I had come together from that point. I had dealt with all my social issues. But at no point did anybody ever ask me to come to terms with addiction. And I truly am an addictive type of personality. I use things like alcohol and drugs to sort of wipe away my problems.
How do you now deal with your problems?
Now when I come across problems, I sort of confront them, and I recognize my powerlessness over them. A problem is nothing more than something that's going on in the world around me. All of this is just the world around me. It doesn't affect what really happens inside of me. I have 100% control of the way I react to things. And the way I react to things is my world. The outside world, this apartment, is not me. It's things that surround me. And the way I react to them, I have 100% control of. And that's basically all any problem is it's an outside stimulus that you have no control over. And you can't live your life ruled by the outside stimulus around you. You can merely control the way you react to what's going on around you. It's sort of like a different way of living your life. And it's been happy for me. The last 5 years have been the most wonderful years of my life. I look in the mirror now and there's somebody looking back at me that I know. I know this person. It's just a very warm, wonderful feeling.
One other thing I want you to deal with, do you, from everything you've said, it's interesting. Though I'm sure you've had a number of sexual experiences, from everything you said, you really liked you probably like the idea of having relationships. Is that right, or?
Yes, I'm a very relationship-oriented person. What I'm looking for in life is a oneness. I really honestly believe that there's a pyramid of life. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a pyramid. I have everything in life that I could possibly want. And more than I've ever dreamed I would want. I've got a wonderful job. I've got a wonderful family. It's very supportive. They're aware of my gay situation, and they're very supportive, and they accept it. I have wonderful friends. I really do. They're all people that make me feel good. They're emotionally stimulating people, and true friends, real true friends. And I've reached a point where I have all these things in my pyramid, and the only thing missing right now is somebody to share that with. And I honestly feel it's important that you don't share these wonderful things in your life with a group of people. I just don't think that's what it's all about. Everybody needs somebody to share those special feelings with. And somebody else that feels good about themselves. And two people feeling good about themselves together is what union is all about. And that can only happen between two people. that I think it's something very rare that in life. It's very rare that two people are at the same place in their life at the same time and come together and want to complete the wholeness of somebody's life. And that's really what I'm looking for. I believe that can only be filled by one person. I just don't feel that you can feel a wholeness in your life by filling it with many people. It just doesn't work. I like to think of it from the attitude of a children's book that I have. It's called The Missing Piece. And in the missing piece, there's a circle. That's a person. There's a little tiny wedge missing out of the person, the circle. That is this person. And he rolls around like a ball, rolling around. And he rolls just perfectly with this little tiny wedge missing out of him. And he looked for something to fit the opening. Some were too big. Some wedges didn't fit because they're too big. Some are way too small. And those represent different places in your psychological development. And the space certainly can't be filled by many little pieces. There's just one piece that fits just perfectly. And when it's put into place, it's a whole, a 100% round whole that rolls along. And I really think that's the way my life is. I'm looking for just the right wedge, the right person that fills a spot in my life. Somebody that doesn't fill any needs for me. I have a need for companionship. I don't need material items. I don't need anything from somebody. I don't need somebody to make me happy. I want somebody to be happy with me.
That's interesting. I think we can stop at this one because I don't know how much tape we have left.
Okay.
I really, let me.
Really do believe.
Yeah.
Because I continuously delve deeper and deeper. I could have lived a perfectly functional, superficial life if I weren't the digging type of person.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you could easily have done
Sure.
that. I mean, you are a kind of man who, like in the 19th century or something. Wait a minute, I gotta stop this. You're a person who might have married and not been very happy, but very successful. You know what I mean?
Yes,
In the Victorian age, England is filled with guys like that.
I think it's very possible that I could have gone on and lived a very happy heterosexual life,
Yeah.
like I'm sure many people did.
I gotta try to get this to go backward faster. Why is it not doing this? Hold on a minute. I don't know. It's let me. I wanted to show you yourself, so that's why I want to do this. Now. Oh.